Have you ever wondered why everything in Rimworld seems to be made out of pure steel, especially the things that shouldn't be made of steel at all? Hello there, my name is Argon. Well, that's not actually my real name. In this video I wanted to share with you a small overview of my Rimworld mod Expanded Materials Metals, and some insight on the process of creating it, so let's check it out. First of all, I have to say that this is a reworked version of the mod. There is another version which you can download, but in this video I will explain why I decided to give it a full remake and how I managed to get it working. I'm pretty sure it'll have lots of bugs, but let's think positively for now. Expanded Materials is a mod series in which I have worked since I started making mods for Rimworld back in the year 2020. I published it soon after I made some other mods that I really enjoyed making, and I have to say, people seem to like it. So I quickly began expanding on it and creating other mods for the series. But I always knew they had some small flaws that I couldn't address with the knowledge I had back then. During a short period of reduced activity and focusing on other projects like my book, I learned a lot about modding and took the time to carefully redesign the mods of the Expanded Materials series. By the way, I am currently still working hard on my book. I self-published the first part of the saga in Spanish, and I'm actively translating it to English so I'll be able to reach a broader audience. I intend to share more content about the book here as well, so if you're interested, consider leaving me a like or a comment, and if you want to check the Spanish version anyway, you can check the link in the description. Now, back to the materials. The new mod adds back most of the metals that were added in the previous version. Those are iron, copper, tin, bronze, lead, stainless steel, titanium, and germanium, alongside some new others that were included in the rework, such as mild steel, tempered steel, and silicon. The mod also adds other important materials such as coal and charcoal. These new materials are meant to bridge some gaps that exist with the base game's metals and provide some complexity to the production chains and crafting system. These new metals will make game progression harder, but more rewarding as well. The mod doesn't change much in comparison to its predecessor. Here's a brief description of what you can expect from this mod. First of all, you'll notice that there is no more steel or plasteel generated naturally in the mountains. In order to get steel, you'll have to mine for iron and combine it with coal to create steel. There are also other useful materials such as tin, copper, or lead that will generate naturally as well. Copper is now the main material used to build power conduits, and is required alongside tin to craft components. Both of these metals can be combined to create bronze, which is a relatively cheap building material that can replace steel, but also has cleanliness and beauty benefits, so you can use it to create sculptures or tiles. Lead is a material that sucks for weapons. Really, it sucks, so don't make weapons or armor with it. It has two benefits that can make you save resources. First, it is incredibly efficient to refill turret ammunition. With just a bunch of lead, you can keep your turrets alive and deadly for a long time. If you were to refill them with steel, this would cost significantly more resources. Lead also serves to manufacture components and chem fuel at a very high rate, in exchange for a small dose of lead poisoning applied to your worker pawn. You know you shouldn't smell those funky vapors. This effect is directly affected by the pawn's toxic resistance, by the way, and you can also turn it off if you want. Speaking of efficiency, coal and charcoal will allow you to refuel your torches, campfires, generators, and everything that requires wood much more efficiently. I highly recommend using LWM's fuel filter or any other mod that allows you to select which items you use as fuel, in order to control whether or not your colonists use your precious coal to refuel that campfire you constructed to burn that lead knife poor 14% that the last rider dropped. Finally, other materials like silicon, germanium, stainless steel, and titanium will replace some of the costs of gold, plasteel, and silver that are required in the game. For example, sterile tiles will no longer require silver to be made. Instead, they will require stainless steel, which can be crafted without the need for silver. So you end up saving resources at the cost of an extra step in production. Some of the game's elements that required plasteel now require titanium, for example, medical implants and some weapons. Titanium is easier to find and is more frequently sold by traders, so you can save your plasteel for advanced armor or turrets. Silicon and germanium will allow you to craft more components, thus reducing the cost of other materials, in exchange for maybe getting a little stuck if you can't find the specific material that is needed. although there are plenty of different recipes available to create the same items, and also most of the mod's alterations can be easily turned off via settings. Now for the last point, which is the new variants of steel, these are only meant to enhance immersion in the game, and they were possible thanks to the following feature, which is also the main reason why I decided to remake the mod from scratch. A feature that was much needed in the previous edition is one that I call material exchangeability, and it is part of my mod framework called Organic Core. That means if you are a Rimworld modder too, you can make use of this feature as well by simply making it a dependence. And since it doesn't add any content, you won't bloat your mod with extra unwanted things. This material exchange feature basically lets you replace materials in different constructions where you normally wouldn't. I think it's better explained with an example. Consider the research bench. As you can see, you can build it with any material: wood, stone, steel, even gold if you happen to be rich enough. However, it also costs a certain amount of steel. This material is fixed, and it makes sense, since the table is not empty, it has a whole bunch of items and trinkets lying on top, although bottles and paper may not exactly be made of steel, but you get the point. This represented a problem quickly, however. In the previous mod, and this one too, steel is locked behind a research project that you have to complete in order to unlock the ability to alloy steel. The mod completely removed natural steel generation and left the player with iron as a default standard general purpose metal. So how on earth were you supposed to build a research bench and unlock steel if you needed steel to build a bench? Of course, I did realize this issue and came up with a solution for it, simply patching it so that certain structures require iron instead of steel. How does patching work, you might ask? Well, in Rimworld pretty much everything is defined in the game files using a language called XML. These definitions, which are called defs by the way, act like sort of blueprints for objects. They define various properties of an object and its behavior, and the game uses that information to create the actual objects in-game. Patching is basically just altering these blueprints. Before the game finishes loading, it'll check if a mod is trying to modify one of these defs, and it applies such modifications. So I decided to modify the cost of certain structures that were unlocked at the beginning of the game, like the research bench, and make them require iron instead of steel. Did this solve the problem? Well, no. Turns out that Rimworld doesn't have a very linear progression, and sometimes during regular playthroughs, especially if you play with several mods, you end up having a bunch of different resources around. What does this mean? Well, it meant that sometimes it happened that you had steel instead of iron, and you needed to build one of the structures that I had altered to require iron instead. So you were in the same situation as before, only this time it felt even worse because you were being limited by having a better material. If the research bench required a paperweight to be made of iron, then why couldn't you make it with steel instead? It made no sense. In addition to this problem, there was a second one which was even more tedious: mods. Rimworld players play with a lot of mods, sometimes near 800. Other people play with around 400 to 500, but in general it's common to see modded Rimworld playthroughs use an insane amount of content. This is a topic I want to talk about in another video, so if I see this video has some visibility, I'll probably add it to my list of projects. When I initially released EM Metals, I patched some of the content added by popular mods that I myself played with a lot. Turns out that it quickly became a lot to handle. Some people requested me to patch mods that I never used or wasn't very interested in. A lot of good mods that I wanted to play with got released, and people asked me to patch such mods as soon as they were released. And at a certain point, I found myself working more on patches than on new mods. And I do have to say something, disagree with me if you have to, but coding XML patching is boring as hell, especially when you're doing it out of pressure for your mod to work well. So, after some time of learning and designing, I came up with an idea that would let you replace certain materials with others depending on the technology level of the structure involved. This required to code in C#, which is not as straightforward as XML, but it allows you to have a much wider control over things and create much more customizable mechanics. I initially started by thinking of a way to make certain materials give you the option to replace them. I solved it by just creating a custom object that doesn't appear in the game, but it serves as a way to store the information of which material can replace which material and up to which tech level. For example, Bronze can replace steel, but only in anything that is below medieval tech level, so you can't make your spaceships with bronze, sorry. In order to make this work, I first needed to create a game component, which is an object that can store information and is able to save and load that information alongside your game. I also needed to create a way so that the game knows if a certain resource was replaced in any specific construction. In the game there are 3 distinct objects. The blueprint, the transparent version of the building which designates where it's going to be built, the frame, the building when it's in the process of being constructed, and the building itself. So I had to take into account that the game handles them separately and make sure that each one of these consistently passed in the correct information to the other. I hope I won't forget to comment out any logging, because if I do, I will get people panicking at the sight of a message in the console. Which in a certain way is understandable, considering the amount of weird issues this game tends to generate when modded. Now you can successfully replace your steel with iron or mild steel when you're constructing your base, which makes the new resources actually feel like metal variants instead of an additional resource that only serves the purpose to fill up your storage. So basically that's some of the challenges and details of this mod's development that I thought were interesting to share. I can't think of many other things that might be attractive. I kinda don't feel like just making a long video explaining every detail of modding, but I do feel like making smaller videos just sharing random insights of my work. I wanted to say special thanks to some of the people at the Rimworld modding community like Bradson, Ilana, and Evelyn, I hope I pronounced their names well, who helped me on several occasions whenever I had a problem I couldn't solve because, well, I basically lacked a sufficient amount of intelligence. I really hope you'll enjoy this mod as well as the others that I plan to release in the future. I do modding for the fun of it, and it feels amazing to think that other people enjoy the things that I create. Consider leaving me a like on this video if you found it interesting or fun, and subscribe to my channel if you'd like me to upload more interesting stuff. Leave a comment on your ideas for other videos or content. I used to publish videos on YouTube when I was a kid, and that small dream of having a channel where I could upload anything I wanted about my creations and projects never died, so if you want to show your support, I will be forever thankful. You can also check my Discord server if you want to interact with amazing people or just chill, and lastly, you can follow me on social media where I also upload random stuff and insights of my artistic projects. Whoa, that felt like a lot of spam. Anyways, thank you for watching and I hope to see you in another video. Goodbye.